Hello everyone, welcome back to Crimson Gray, Dusk and Dawn. Let's go ahead and continue. Are you done studying? For tonight, yeah. There's no point doing more, since I can read at work tomorrow. Then... She drifted closer to him, smile broadening as she poured over his face. He wasn't too tired. He'd made a point of saying his work was done. And though he had been watching her with gentle affection, she knew there was more there. Lizzie eagerly slid down into his lap, her body pressing up against his. Soon she could feel the proof of his desire in his pants, and she cooed happily. But though he put his arms around her waist, his eyes still watched her carefully. I know you need to get up early tomorrow, though. Do you want to? I am permanently stuck on the first option. Grinning, Lizzie leaned in closer and kissed him. There had been so many small kisses throughout the day, each adding a little warmth inside her. And now she returned it all, kissing him deeply and passionately. His hands tightened at her waist, holding her a little closer. Most of the hesitance and uncertainty were gone now, since they were familiar with each other's bodies. She had never had trouble needing him too much to be hesitant, but John moved more slowly. It sent a thrill through her every time he touched her confidently. Lizzie bent closer to him, and there was a loud knock on the door. Oh boy, who could be interrupting our little spicy session? Oh dear God, she's really pissed. It's a deeper red than when we first met that lady and guy. Her eyes narrowed to slits, and she glared murder toward the entrance. We don't have to answer. Another knock, louder. No, ignoring it was not an option. Lizzie sprang up from his lap and wrenched open the door. The boy on the other side was someone she recognized from one of John's classes. John said he was intelligent and Lizzie didn't find him annoying. So under normal circumstances, he was fine. At the moment, she felt only rage toward him, barely contained within her smile. He was physically fit but no threat. Her axe could be in her hand before... Hey Aaron, what's up? You guys wanna check the news? Francesca Kelsey's gonna... Seriously, just do it. Who? It took Lizzie an anxious moment to identify the name. A public figure. Not someone they knew. Related to the pharmaceutical industry. Not an immediate threat, but an annoyance at this moment. The news seemed to matter to John, so he headed to turn on the salvage TV in the corner. Lizzie reluctantly acknowledged that Aaron was going to be an entity in their life at least for a little while, and allowed him to step inside. After flipping to the right channel, John watched carefully as the news report ran. Aaron slouched against the nearby wall, leaving Lizzie to hover behind John. When she heard Koitek's name, she began to pay full attention, soaking up in the information. The study they're talking about. What did we miss? They didn't go into detail, but something about sloppy pharmaceutical experience used to be. A whole town of people got sick. Bad stuff. Lizzie's heart began beating rapidly. Was it possible that the report mentioned her? No, not her specifically. There were privacy concerns. But might have referenced her experiments. Lizzie's fingers began twitching at her sides, which drew John's attention. He frowned a little, then turned to Aaron. How many cases did they talk about? Anything involving specific individuals? Just general information that I heard. Why? Exactly the question that Lizzie had been afraid of, but John didn't seem disturbed. I used to be a part of a Pakistan trial that didn't go well. At least for me. I was wondering if it got mentioned. Oh, is that how you got clued into all this? Behind them, Lizzie let her fingers slowly relax. John had been thinking of her, hadn't exposed her to any unnecessary attention. Of course he would. She was awful for doubting him. While she was feeling a warm glow, she missed John's response. Well, anyway, they only emphasize the biggest cases. Kelsey is trying to prove that the harms are large and that government policy needs to change. So that was how it connected. Francesca Kelsey was a researcher who used to work for the Food, Drug, and Cosmetics Administration. Led this part of a protest. She had been campaigning for increased powers to regulate pharmaceutical megacorporations since then. Lizzie usually didn't have many opinions about politics, but she proved in this case if it did damage to Koitek. She had never seen the woman herself, though. Lizzie watched curiously until the news station played a clip of Francesca speaking about the report, then began chewing on one knuckle. Though Francesca appeared serious and dressed professionally, she was too young for Lizzie's taste. Maybe it was fine for John to pay attention to her, since she was doing important work related to both of them. But his attention focusing on anyone else made Lizzie anxious. This is good to know. But why'd you run over here? The congressional debates are going to take forever. Oh, that wasn't the urgent part. They said it earlier. Kelsey is going on speaking tour trying to raise awareness of the issue. But not all the locations are set. We need to get to her on campus, man. I get it. I don't know how much help we can be, though. Well, I wanted to ask if you would join again. We need more people to lead this if we're going to gain any momentum. John hesitated, looking toward her. His mouth had opened slightly as if to ask something, but he saw the tension in her eyes. Aaron looked back too, but Lizzie had pulled her finger from her mouth, and he couldn't see past her smile. It's going to be hard for us to commit to that, I think. But keep us informed about what happens, alright? Alright. I won't press. I'm gonna get Kelsey here, though. Surely we're a big enough campus. While John made small talk and walked Aaron out, Lizzie stayed in front of the television and kept watching the broadcast. Koitek had tried to take John away from her. She had feared 1,000 things, and many times he had calmed her fears. But back then, she had been absolutely right. An intellectual part of her knew that it was a huge corporation, manufacturing many common drugs. Not all of them were as ill-advised as Pt.2. Not every experiment was harmful, and not every employee could be as terrible as Mrs. Smith. It didn't matter. Lizzie hated all of them. But she couldn't hack apart the entire corporation, so she had no choice but to hope that something could be done. That was why she didn't mind people like Aaron so much. They could be useful. Maybe even this Francesca, but that didn't mean Lizzie wanted her to come here, especially since she might bring attention from Koitek. Was this what she had been fearing? That was why they couldn't get married, not with an event like this looming in the future, not while something could go wrong. All too soon, the broadcast moved on to other subjects. Though the pharmaceutical giants were becoming increasingly important to everyday life, they were still usually ignored compared to the banal celebrity news. Lizzie didn't care about that. Since random food celebrities wouldn't attract John's eye, she still moved to turn the television off, though. When she turned back, she discovered John watching her with concern. She had been aware that Aaron had left, of course, but that was at the periphery of her thoughts. Only now did she reflect on the amount of time that passed. Are you worried about it? I'm just afraid something will happen. Pt.2 will be watching. John approached and wrapped his arms around her. Lizzie eagerly let herself rest against his chest. Maybe, but everyone will be watching. Francesca Kelsey is one of their main political opponents, so they have to know that anything around her will be scrutinized. Even if Aaron gets her to come, I'm sure it will pass without incident. That was logical. It was probably true. And though Lizzie cut and recut his sentence a dozen different ways, she didn't discern any real affection when he spoke the other woman's name. She was just a political figure working in an important cause. No more. She wasn't the threat. I know, but the reminder has me feeling so stressed. I understand. Let's just get some sleep, okay? Too late. Lizzie realized that she had worked against herself. Though she felt anxious and twitchy now, if he had initiated again, she would happily welcomed it. That would have let her take her mind off everything else for a time. But now, he was just worried that she was only doing it for his sake. As much as she tried to convince him otherwise, it might trouble him. And that always made things less enjoyable. Accepting the way things had gone, Lizzie smiled warmly at him and pulled them both toward the bedroom. Please hold me until I fall asleep. As they lay together, Lizzie curled up against his side. She began to feel calm again. Being near him always generated deep warmth within her, and just lying in his arms like this was peaceful bliss. Maybe John had been right not to do anything that night. Her love for him was deathless, but she wasn't as perfect as he deserved. Sometimes her mind wouldn't cooperate, or her past got in the way. What she needed most now was to lie here with him. Together. For her, it was just another glorious element of their life together. As John stroked her hair affectionately, she reminded herself that he was happy just to be like this as well. Smiling, Lizzie drifted to sleep. The warehouse stretched forever in every direction, sterile white walls yawning toward eternity. In the center of it, they were impossibly tiny, yet they were everything. Her memory of the scene played out again. Mrs. Smith having both of them trapped, trying to turn them against each other, and realized she had fought back. John had helped her, and trusted her even at her worst, and he had escaped. But this time, instead of using an injection to cause him pain, Mrs. Smith began removing her clothes. She cast Lizzie a mocking smile and then slid in John's lap, pressing herself against his chest. He struggled, but he was bound too tightly to do anything else. Lizzie tore out of the dream and found herself bolt upright in bed. She had snaked her knife from its place and held it out in front of her, gleaming in the moonlight. It took her a moment to come back to herself, to realize that it had been a dream. John was lying beside her, coming awake as he realized how upset she was. There was no fear in his eyes, but she could see the deep concern there. Lizzie? Are you alright? I'm fine, John. Just a bad dream. She gave him a beaming smile and set the knife aside casually, but her acting wasn't good enough. There were still those lines of concern on his face. It was wonderful that he had come to know her better and better, but that meant she couldn't keep herself from being a burden to him. It can be hard to shake those off. Come here and rest, Lizzie. Though she wanted to pretend that everything was alright, she couldn't resist his soothing voice. Lizzie curled up next to him again, resting her head on his chest. It did feel wonderful, pushing aside the remnants of the dream. This wasn't how it was supposed to be. She was supposed to protect him. John was the one who was so sad. He needed to be protected from the world. He carried so much weight. She couldn't add anything to it. Lizzie bit her lip and squeezed him to guide her, wishing she could be perfect. Sorry, John. Don't say that. I'm glad I can be here for you. You always are. Come here and try to relax. She snuggled against him, much of her anxiety fading. But what if one day he wasn't there? What if someone took him from her? She'd bathe the world in blood, and it would do no good because he would be gone, and she would have nothing. Lizzie slowly managed to let go of her other thoughts and just enjoy his presence. But it took her a very long time to go to sleep. The lecture rolled onward, flowing around the edges of Lizzie's mind. She was absorbing some of the information, but her thoughts were mostly elsewhere. On the page in front of her, increasingly, she'd taken the back corner seat so that it would look like as if she was dutifully taking notes. In fact, she was pouring out her thoughts into the pages of her spiral notebook. Lizzie paused a moment, looking over what she had written recently. It was chaotic, but a familiar chaos. She'd written his name many times, frequently surrounded by hearts. In several places she'd drawn little pictures of herself killing Mrs. Smith. It was playful, though, and writing out her emotions made her feel a little more stable. Thinking of him always made her smile, but Lizzie also stopped to consider John as analytically as she could. Her mind ran over the roll of images she held of his face, all the smallest changes in his eyes. He was sadder than usual, she realized, perhaps because of the stress of work. Since he was covering more shifts, Lizzie resolved that she would have to try even harder to lift him up, make him as happy as he deserved to be. Pulling herself out of her thoughts, Lizzie set aside the notebook and returned to her real notes. She didn't need to take many, quickly jotting down the key points to catch up to the speaker. When she was done, her mind began to wander again. It seemed that the event planning had gone through. The local campus activist groups had petitioned the right places, so now Francesca Kelsey was going to be speaking in town. That was a good thing, theoretically. It would disturb Koitek and it would make John happy. Lizzie had read some of her articles to try to vet her, and Francesca seemed intelligent. Her visit would probably give them nice things to talk about. She was married too, and had been for 6 years. Everything was fine, so Lizzie didn't object to them getting a little involved in helping to set up the event. Everything was fine. Lizzie absent-mindedly realized that she was gripping her pen tightly and stabbing it repeatedly into the side of her notebook, leaving it covered in gouges. After class, Lizzie headed out and started to walk her usual path before she remembered that things had changed. Frowning slightly, she changed her route to head to the administration building instead, where she would be meeting with John. Others would be there as well. The exact purpose of the event was unclear to her. At a minimum, they would gather and receive information about the various activities they would be doing in preparation for the visit and speech. Presumably, after they would go to said activities, and she could not be alone with them. Except that he had expressed interest, which was reasonable. Perhaps they would participate. He had noticed their anxiousness, however, and not commit to anything beforehand. That was very considerate of him, and made Lizzie vow to do a better job of supporting him. As she entered the building, she saw that a crowd of people had gathered. It appeared to be an ordinary enough college group, likely not a concern, though it is more difficult to evaluate threats in crowds such as this. She gathered through the random people in the way, but was unable to find John. Realizing that she was going to be engaged, Lizzie refocused on Aaron, who was coming to greet her. Aaron and 2 women, young, attractive women their age. wearing clothes that were stylish and extremely suggestive. Not physical threats, but potentially. She has quite the cleavage on her, but why is there two of her? Are you hallucinating, Lizzie? Lizzie gave all of them a brittle smile. Hey Lizzie, good to see you here. Hello. We're just getting organized, but there are a ton of things we need to do. We already printed a bunch of flyers to put up, but we actually got space on one of the big boards, so we need some people to help design a poster. And we also... Where's John? Over there in the corner. We were going to organize after... Thank you. Lizzie left them, though she watched Erin and theirs for a moment longer. Erin seemed to have no, she wasn't completely happy, which was a problem. Being herself around John had made her sloppy, though Erin also might be more perceptive than average. She headed through the crowd, searching for John. Ravner knew that the people here were probably decent, given their interest. No. Too many of them were just looking for socialization, for a cause that made them feel good about themselves. There were too many of them to judge, and some could possibly be threats. Let's ignore others and find John Wait, what? Eliminate everyone in the room, ignore targets and find John, defend John with knives, interrogate Erin for more information, retreat, gather weapons, and monitor the situation. No, Lizzie, no. Ignore targets and find John. Though many options presented themselves to her, Lizzie decided to take the simplest. Best to be prepared, and not do anything that might disturb John. That left her feeling a little more confident in herself, but Lizzie still searched for his voice in the crowd and focused on him. There he was. Lizzie restrained herself as she simply skipped up to him, taking his arm like any normal girlfriend would do. Her fingers dug into his arm, harder than she intended, as he gave her a look and a hint of concern. Hello, Lizzie. Why the sad face, John? What's wrong? Sorry I'm late. She beamed at John to reassure him that everything was alright, and also beamed at the nearby people. Not likely any threats, but she beamed hard at them anyway. I actually just finished organizing all the different tasks. And it's better at drawing people together than organizing the details, you know? That's so true. You. Some girl laughed unnecessarily loudly at his observation, prompting Lizzie's full attention to zeroing in on her. Slight pupil dilation, and a visible flush. Heart rate slightly above average. Was that flirting? Was she trying to steal him away from her? Calm down, Lizzie. But we haven't assigned any tasks yet. What do you think, Lizzie? Do you want to help? Or do we have too much to do at home? It was an obvious lifeline to her if she was too stressed, and Lizzie loved him for it. Of course she could trust her, John. He would always be true to her. Aw, you might have to go. We need all the help you can get. The girl's gaze turned away from John, too deliberately. A ruse? Toward Lizzie? She gave a smile that touched the corners of her eyes, indicating that it was authentic. But though Lizzie automatically mirrored it, she could felt only cold hollowness. Is this all in Lizzie's head that every other girl is a pretty target that might steal John away? I was actually hoping you could help us spread flyers. I've seen you around campus. You're super fast. What game did she have in mind with such flattery? Lizzie failed to see the advantage the girl gained, but she disliked the situation all the same. Still, there was a wide variety of different tasks available, and not all of them would leave John vulnerable. She had delayed too long in answering, leaving an uncomfortable pause. It had been a very long time since her social skills had failed her like that. Worse, it was causing him stress, which was unacceptable. Lizzie pretended to be looking over the organizational sheet to buy herself a little time. Lizzie? His voice sounded slightly pained, which broke Lizzie's heart. She couldn't add to his depression. Let me try it again. She couldn't add to his depression. She couldn't. The idea of participating wasn't unpleasant, but it would be so much calmer and more wonderful alone at home. Lizzie looked up, smiled, and made her decision. Don't participate, let him participate, but keep him safe, take care of him. Take care of it for him, participate together. Let's save. This sounds like a really important decision. Let's participate together. I gotta keep my eyes on you. Hunting at the flower sounds fun. Let's go together. Good. We have a plan for getting them through campus, but also all over town. John began going over the plan, which was simple enough. She could probably have done all the flyers herself, but if she got to walk around with him, then it would be worth it. The problem was that so many other people were involved. People John delegated to other locations. Suspicious girls with questions. At one point, they even needed to drive in someone else's car. There's too many people too close for her. She had hoped it would be just the two of them. But as they worked, John was often smiling. The whole social environment, working together with people toward the same cause, seemed to make him happy. That was good. He saved his brightest smiles for her, never getting too close to any of the other girls. It was fine. The event left Lizzie a little nervous, but she judged that acceptable. She could drain stress from him into herself. That was the way it should be. When they get home, John seemed lighter than usual. She found herself smiling in response to his happiness and snuggled against him as they fell asleep after the long day, his hands stroking her hair. When her schedule went unusually well, Lizzie found herself actually somewhat troubled. She had no reading for classes, shopping had gone quickly, and nothing had slowed her down. That meant that she had a surprising amount of extra time on the one night John needed to work late at the library. For a little while she busied herself tidying up the house and cleaning her knives, but she found herself anxious. There's no serious premonition, just as uncomfortable feeling. She was glad to have him in her mind, and she was sure she would soon find his song again, but she also wanted him in the flesh. She spent a while writing in her notebook, many of the pages now heavy with ink. Mostly plans for worst-case scenarios. If something happened during Francesca's visit, she needed to protect John. That couldn't hold her attention for long. This was a bad night to be home alone. After chewing on one knuckle for a while, Lizzie decided she could just go visit John at the library. She padded across campus, knowing how different it was at night. The normal dorms were still bright, and were becoming progressively louder as the students started to party. A few were ambling further, likely drunk or stoned. They had been invited a time or two, but for the most part she and John didn't have connections to those crowds. Being together and off campus, even just slightly off campus, set them apart from the other students. Normally, Lizzie never gave the subject a second thought. Now she found herself resenting their happiness. All them wasting their time so carelessly while he was working, alone and probably depressed. If she urged him to take fewer shifts, he would. Lizzie knew that. But as much as she wanted more of him, she didn't want to unfairly force him to do that. If John thought the extra work was necessary, then he was probably right. Still, Lizzie's eyes briefly flickered to the couple sprawled over one another in the grass. Neither a threat. They were pulling at their clothes, though, and well past the point of just making out. Before they finished college, she wanted a moment like that. Not doing something like that in public, but simply being together by the trees, enjoying themselves. College should be a time of happy memories, light years between the drama they're meeting and the difficulties of adulthood. She wanted something she could remember forever, maybe capture in the picture. Yet right now everything was so complicated. Lizzie frowned and looked away, increasing her pace. It wasn't fair. The library itself was basically deserted since few were doing research on the Friday night. That was why John ended up with a long shift, and why he took it, getting paid to do his own work. Lizzie found herself shifting to walk silently instead of giving any sign of her presence. This could be a good opportunity to observe him without him being aware. It had been the first way that she had come to love him, and though the other ways since coming to know him were better, watching still held a special place in her heart. She peered around the bookshelf and finally spotted him. John sat behind the desk, reading from one of his books. He was making decent progress, brow furrowed in that concentrated look that she so loved. But occasionally, his focus seemed to waver. She noticed his eyes grew a little distant and he had to backtrack on the page. Sometimes when he did, he looked at a sheet of paper beside him for a while, occasionally make a note. Were they just his notes? But she knew John's note-taking habits extremely well, and that wasn't how he usually operated. It was as if he was trying to read, but simultaneously distracted by thoughts of something else. What could it possibly be? Her mind imagined that was some kind of love letter, but she discarded that possibility as quickly as she could. No, John wouldn't do that. If he wrote a love letter, it would be to her. He looked so sad, though. Lizzie stared as if her gaze could strip away his skull and reveal every thought inside. If she had just understood him perfectly, she could prevent him from being sad. There would be no anxiety then, only perfect trust for one another. Lizzie retreated further in the library, just in case he looked up in her direction, and watched him from a vantage point even he wouldn't notice. He did glance up a few times, almost as if he felt her watching, but she was too well hidden. It was wonderful that he could almost sense her, but Lizzie needed to watch him for now. Eventually, she would understand. Hours passed in a flash, and suddenly John was standing and yawning. After so long of his stillness, it was almost startling. Apparently his shift was almost over, which meant he would need to lock up. Deciding that she had watched enough, Lizzie sneaked through the back stacks and approached him near the entrance again, beaming. John smiled the instant he saw her. "Oh, Lizzie, I hope you weren't lonely. I just wanted to come greet you once your shift was over. You're a sight for sore eyes after this dead shift. Just give me a moment to lock up." It didn't take him long, and they were walking across campus to head back home, her arm through his and her head leaning against his shoulder. They passed the couple, now lying still on top of one another. John seemed a little surprised, but just shook his head. Lizzie inclined her head toward them, then looked back at him and raised her eyebrows. "Wow, was it a graveyard shift? Damn, it's morning already." "Sorry, I could barely keep my eyes open." "That's okay, I know you studied hard. Let me help you rest." When they got home, she quickly took his bag from him to put away before he could go to the trouble. If she acted quickly enough, she wouldn't need to use any more energy to make decisions and could just relax. Eventually, he fell asleep with his head on her lap, finally looking truly at peace. Lizzie stroked his hair and stared down at him, watching.